keep it recording and then we'll just. Yeah. There you go, you're on.
All right, call this work session to order of the Planning Commission and the I forget what they're called. Anyway, at 10:08. Roll call. Do we need to recall? We don't need a roll call.
We can do a roll call since it's a Zoom meeting, so I'll have to go through it in my brain, but Commissioner Orsi
Yes.
and Commissioner Norman
Yes.
and Chair Starbuck.
Yes, yes.
And yeah, thanks, 2 people. And I just heard back from Sally and she is gonna join, so she'll hop on and Commissioner Drukowski will be here as well. Great, so I will go ahead and introduce the student team. So we've been working with a student team from the University of Oregon's Institute for Policy Research and Engagement. I think I got that right. And they started working with us back in January. And they have been looking at resiliency efforts on the South Jetty and also doing some reimagining of the park spaces out there. The origin of the project was that the city's been looking for a long time to do something with the land that we acquired from the county out on Jetty, the Jetty Park area, which is really just a gravel path or a gravel parking lot. And then we've got a desire to connect the Old Town area up with Beach Loop Drive through the Jetty pathway. We've run into a lot of issues along the way, and so we've applied for a number of grants over the years to try to fix some of the problems we see out there. We were contacted by Mike Howard at IPRE, who saw one of our grant requests and said, I think I might have a team that could help you out with this. And it's been just it's a wonderful process to work with the student team. So I think I'm probably tossing it over to Cameron to kick it off. They've got a presentation for you and they've created a story map. And so we wanted to have them present the materials, and then the meeting is recorded so we can share this with the city council and other members of the community who are interested. So yeah, come on, Jeff. And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to the student team.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dana. And thank you so much, planning commissioners, for allowing us to take up some of your time and discuss our project with you. It's been a real joy to learn about Bandon. I had never been to Bandon before this project, and just love the town. My wife and I love going to the coast to visit all the coastal towns up and down Oregon, and this is definitely our next spot to come and visit as a family. Really enjoyed learning about your town and the South Jetty in particular. My name's Cameron. On the call with me is our project director, Michael Howard, Dylan McCarthy, and Danny Dolphin. They'll all be speaking at various points throughout the day. Before we jump into showing you our deliverable and what we created, just wanted to provide a little bit of background. Dana mentioned this a little bit already, but we started working with the city of Bandon in January, and we kind of kicked off our project by meeting with Dana and just talking about the project in general. We kind of discussed some of the things that the city was hoping to get out of this project, discussed some of the coastal concerns that are present at the South Jetty, and just kind of became grounded. We then went to Bandon and met with Dana and other folks at the city, in addition to some partners with Dogami, the Department of Geology for Oregon, as well as members of the Colquitt Indian Reservation or tribe, and just walked the site and got kind of more grounded there. So then we went back to our computers and did what planners do, and we researched. We learned about the history of Bandon. We did geospatial analysis using computer modeling softwares to understand the extent of flooding and tsunami hazards and earthquakes and invasive species like gorse. I see our gorse guy on the call. Nice to see you. And kind of did that high-level background research to learn more about the issues. We then came back to Bandon to get grounded in the community and learn what their concerns were. I think it's easy for us as planners to understand what we think the concerns are. In a low-lying area like the South Jetty, we think of flooding and tsunamis and some of those more hazardous conditions. But we really wanted to hear from the residents what their concerns are and also get an idea of what they would like to see in the South Jetty in the future. So we conducted some door-to-door outreach where we were talking with residents at the South Jetty. We conducted an intercept survey where we were just kind of catching people as they were walking down to the beach at South Jetty Park and talking with them. And we also administered a survey in various ways, including the city's Facebook. And we also tabled at an event that Dogami put on. It was the Tsunami 101 Roadshow. They were going up and down the coast to talk about tsunamis, which was very front and center for a lot of you folks following that December tsunami warning. Thankfully, a tsunami did not ensue, but we learned a lot of good things. It was a really good pressure test, I think, for some of our emergency management systems. We met with the executive director at the Pacific View Living community and learned about that process and how it all went for them. So just really grounded ourselves in the community's context. So taking all of that we learned and from surveys and from interviews and from speaking with you all and all of our research, we created an ArcGIS story map. If you're not familiar with a story map, it's an online digital storytelling tool that uses interactive maps and media like photos and videos to create engaging and informative narratives. So our audience for this story map is really everyone, but it's really tailored, to City of Bandon residents and visitors who want to learn more about the area and some of the coastal concerns and imagine what a future at the South Jetty could look like. Additionally, this is for the city to use for their purposes and engaging their residents, educating their residents, but these can also be really good tools to go and try to secure funding to implement some of these recommendations that we have proposed at the South Jetty. Funders really like to see some of these types of interactive tools. In addition to the story map, I think, Dana, did you share that handout with the commission? Great. So we also created an internal facing document for the city to have that Dana shared with you all. This information isn't as like public facing. It deals more with cost estimates, potential funding sources, likely permits that the city would need to implement, and then we also recommended kind of a phasing plan. Given that this is there's a lot of elements to this project, there's a lot of funding that would be required. We kind of put together what we would recommend as a phased approach to this project. So that document is for folks at the city to supplement the story map and hopefully help lead to implementation. So now I am going to share my screen to show you all our ArcGIS story map that we have created. And our goal for this session with you is we want to run through this story map. It is quite detailed and extensive. Can you all see my screen all right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Okay. So we don't have the time to get into every single little thing in detail, but we thought it was important to kind of run through it together so you could see it. So here is the landing page. I'm going to refresh it just so you can see what happens when you first come to this story map. And then I'll show you how to navigate it, and then we'll kind of go through it together. So you come to this landing page that has this nice video of the South Jetty. You don't have to watch this video. You're not stuck here. You can automatically start scrolling. So that's just a little bit of housekeeping here. Additionally, there's a lot of content in this story map. And so it would take you a long time to kind of scroll through it to get to certain sections. But thankfully, there's this header bar that you can see right at the bottom of my screen here. And by clicking on these different sections, it'll take you directly to one of those sections. So if you want to learn more about our community engagement process, you could click on that community engagement link. If you wanted to learn more about our coastal hazards analysis, you could click on that coastal hazards tab and it would take you there. So once we share this link with you and you start exploring this in your own time, know that you can jump around the story map using those headers. So now I'm going to start scrolling through the map and showing you our work. And we really want this to be more of a conversation between you and us. So please, when a question comes up, you need clarification, or you just want to talk about a certain element, please interrupt us. We want this to be more conversational, especially since we can't cover all of this in detail. We're just going to kind of hit some of the highlights. Does that sound good to folks?
Sure.
Yep.
Cameron, what's the length of the story map in its entirety?
We will share that with you. I don't think it's a very clean link. I think you can see it on my screen. It's a bunch of letters and numbers and things like that. So once we are done with this presentation, we will definitely share this with you. We wanted to wait to share it so we didn't get distracted and get lost in all of our cool stuff.
Yeah,
So
and I'll just say too that Gordon will have a link to this on the city's website, so we can share this sort of far and wide with folks. So if you're looking to view this later or share it with your friends, we'll provide that to you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, and I should note that we are handing this project over to the city. So the city will own and manage this story map. So if there's ever edits that need to be made, additions, things like that, the city will have the ability to change that. This is really a tool for you all.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah,
Did you talk to the Port of Bandon?
we did.
And did they comment on the north and south jetties, how they're deteriorating?
Yes, we received some information on their efforts to rehabilitate the jetties. We just actually got some correspondence back from them yesterday with some more information and a report that had some more hard numbers and figures. We also tested or got some advice on our nature-based solutions and whether they think or not they would be feasible for this area. So Jeff, who is the director of the port, provided some really great guidance for us in this project.
All right, thank you.
You
And
bet.
I believe Jeff is on the call today too, so I'm sure he would be happy to unmute and answer questions if you have any.
Awesome.
Hey, everybody.
Nice.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for being here.
coming.
All right, I'm going to start scrolling. So hopefully I don't make you all sick as I scroll through this. Again, landing page, nice interactive video, draw people in. We have a welcome section that talks about our partnership between the University of Oregon and the city of Bandon. So we're going to start from a kind of zoomed out view to let folks know where the heck we're talking about. And we kind of introduce folks to Bandon and where it's located. We then zoom into the city and talk about some of the characteristics of the city at large before zooming in to the South Jetty neighborhood. This next section is fun. What we're doing here is demonstrating the growth that has taken place on the South Jetty in terms of development. So on the left-hand side, as I'm scrolling, you can see some aerial photography showing the South Jetty throughout the decades. And on the right side, what's happening, these different colored polygons that are popping up are showing when these houses were built in these particular decades. So you can kind of watch interactively, look at the photos to see how the South Jetty has developed over the years. And I'm going to go kind of fast so you guys can come back and check this out in your own time because these aerial images are pretty fun to look at. Once we get to current day conditions, all the structures are built out. We then discuss some of the vacation rentals out on the South Jetty. And then we get into more of the tax lots and zoning of the South Jetty. This zoning map has been simplified to show just a few different categories. And as you can see, what I just did is that within each map, there's a legend. This little icon down here, this little square icon, if you click on that within the maps, it'll pop up and it'll provide a legend for you to look at the map. And what we have done throughout this map is we've zoomed into this extent, South Jetty, but what you can do is zoom out and look around Coos County for a lot of the information, and some of our information is even statewide. So you're not constrained to just to look in the South Jetty. So we knew a lot of people would want to see, like, hey, where's my house? What kind of zoning am I in? So that's just another caveat of our map here. We then move into talking about the South Jetty evacuation routes and show some paths about where the evacuation routes are. We talk about some of our current signage at the South Jetty regarding evacuation maps. In our survey, 77% of respondents are aware of the current evacuation signage at the South Jetty, and 92% of these respondents understand what these signs are and what they're trying to tell them. So that was some interesting information we received. Following that, we kind of focus in even closer to the South Jetty and start talking about some of the features of the South Jetty that people love and enjoy, including the South Jetty, how the South Jetty Park provides some great beach access, Redmond Pond, of course. We talk about some current walking paths and the Pacific View Senior Living Center. I'll now hand it off to my teammate, Danny, to discuss our timeline.
Great, thank you. So as Cameron said, we conducted a historical analysis of the area to better understand the community and also the historic hazard areas. And in this timeline, we include geologic events, like other large earthquakes that have happened in and around the Pacific, as well as the development that happened of the jetty and Jetty Road, and major weather events like the Columbus Day storm. With this timeline, you can also click on every photo to enlarge them. And a lot of this information came from the Bandon Historical Society Museum, the Oregon Historical Society, and the Bandon Western World newspaper. So that provided a lot of great information and photographs to share. Then we move into our coastal hazard section. So as you know, Bandon and the South Jetty face a myriad of coastal hazards that impact the residents and infrastructure. And we created this section to demonstrate the weather-related hazards in the area. So part of our community outreach demonstrated that residents are most concerned about earthquakes, tsunamis, and wildfires. So we made sure to include those. And then we also included coastal flooding, which the information comes from the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development, so DLCD, as well as the Oregon Coastal Management Program. And we include videos to demonstrate some current events, and all of the videos are within Coos County, but specifically most of the videos are in Bandon. So in order to play those, you can just touch them and they'll start playing. And you get to see some pretty intense weather events that have happened that I'm sure you all are very aware of. Then we also include some educational tips, especially about sneaker waves. And then we move into estuarine flooding, which this information comes from the Coquille River Estuary Management Plan. We go into, and we have some videos specific to the South Jetty provided by Dana to demonstrate how this impacts the community. We talk about sea level rise with information from DLCD, then some coastal erosion, and then we move into earthquake and those subsequent issues. So earthquake with Cascadia, so that to inform people of like the larger picture, then liquefaction with information from USGS, and then kind of demonstrating what liquefaction is, since many people might not know about liquefaction. And then we move into tsunami scenarios. So from our survey, 89% of respondents said that they know where to evacuate in a local tsunami. So that's really helpful that people are aware of this information. And so we just wanted to provide the specific differences between a distant and local tsunami, as well as the different tsunami scenarios that are provided by Dogami that go from small to extra, extra large. and just seeing the extent that those cover. And then finally, because people were concerned about wildfires, we included some information about wildfires and specifically showing the impacts since there's a historical presence of wildfires, especially with the 1936 wildfire. We wanted to include this information.
Great. So our nature-based solutions section begins with a spectrum of different solutions across the green-gray scale. Our conventional methods are on one side, but they move across, and we have various images to show examples of each one, starting with the jetty, which is in that conventional area, continuing to green-gray, like our living breakwaters. We see hybrid solutions such as traditional revetments and native plants being used side by side. Prompted recovery, such as our rehabilitation of mudflats, marshes, as well as our natural solutions, such as naturally occurring dunes, which protect the beaches. And so these are our recommendations for the South Jetty area. Starting with dynamic revetment, you can use on the beachfront. This was a great graphic that we were graciously given by the Willapa Bay Project. We also have some more examples, such as the South Jetty in Clatsop County, eelgrass and native shellfish, something that we think could be useful in the estuary, as well as the naturalized edges that we think can line especially the park area. And then that mudflat restoration, which we think could be really useful in that more shallow area of the estuary against the river and more of the bank. And continued support of the Gorse Action Group and the work that they're doing, and a link to their website can be seen here, as well as all of the ways in which these plans work to mitigate the various hazards that we've already mentioned.
And then, as Cameron already mentioned about our community engagement and our survey we conducted, so we distributed that through tabling at the Tsunami Talk, door knocking in the South Jetty, and intercept surveys on the beach and in the parking lot. And we received 92 responses from residents and visitors of Bandon and the South Jetty. So that was a really great amount of responses. And then the most common request for features was sidewalks, educational signage, and trails, which Cameron will get into next.
All right. Before I get into our concept plan, I'd like to pause and ask if there's any questions or comments thus far.
I was hoping, can you explain what a dynamic revetment is? I just have this feeling that most people are unfamiliar with the term.
Sure thing. Dylan, take it away.
Sure. That would usually be the establishment of cobber berm on the edge of the beach. It allows for a little bit more flexibility. There's actually a really great GIF example of how regardless of the kinds of wave pressure that you're seeing, this like larger rock instead of the loose sand is a lot more durable and is able to protect the beach front more than your traditional loose sand would.
Yeah, so basically they're large rocks placed in strategic locations to prevent erosion. And since they're not just like concrete structures, like a gray infrastructure, they're actually able to move and kind of um, it's more of a natural way to prevent some of these erosions. So it's dynamic in that way, that rock moves around where it needs to and kind of piles up, and then it recruits vegetation and can actually increase little nooks and crannies for critters and wildlife and things like that. So
And these rocks are like large cobblestones. Is that because when you say large, it could mean
yeah, they're good sized cobble, and you know, we just went to a conference with a bunch of scientists that are working on this type of coastal resiliency strategy. So there's a lot of research that goes into finding the appropriate sized cobble for the particular places, the appropriate size depth of cobble, and placement within there. So, you know, a lot of research would go into figuring out exactly the right cobble size and placement and depth at Bandon South Jetty before that were to ever actually happen. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into it.
And we will be providing a link to some resources provided by the state, by the Department of Geology, on some case studies that have happened in Oregon. So give you some examples of where it's been used in Oregon.
All righty. So now we're going to move into our concept plan. So a concept plan helps us create a vision for the future. So this concept plan was really driven by all of the feedback that we received from residents and from the city and from our partners. When you get to this phase in the story map, this is a cool interactive slider map. So you can click on this icon here and slide it all the way to the left, and you can see what the current conditions at the South Jetty are, right? And as you slide this across to the right, you can see what a future for the South Jetty could look like based on our recommendations. So this is the concept plan. So now we're going to go through this and kind of look at each element. So connecting Old Town to South Jetty. This has been a desire in the South Jetty and Bandon for a long time. We found some really old records demonstrating a desire for some of these connections. And this came out a lot in our survey results. 32% of survey respondents indicated that they would like to see sidewalks connecting Bandon or Old Town to the South Jetty. So as you scroll here, you can learn about some different types of sidewalks that we recommended. There's just the traditional concrete curb and gutter sidewalk, and kind of a visualization of what that could look like. You have Redmond Pond here on the right. You can see the Pacific View Senior Living Community off in the distance and what this road would look like with a sidewalk. Additionally, we looked at what it could look like if we did maybe more of a gravel trail with bollards. Bollards are these black pillars that you see here on the sidewalk. We just wanted to play around with a couple of different options to give the city a vision of what this could be. And in either circumstance, what we're trying to do is create a safer experience for the pedestrians and people in non-motorized vehicles. We would want to ensure that these were ADA compliant, as the senior living community is right there. And when we were out there checking out the site, we actually saw quite a few people walking alongside the road. So you can imagine some of the dangerous conditions that can create, especially during those gray and foggy days when visibility might go down. Here's another shot looking along Jetty Road at what this could potentially look like. You know, we could have a lot of fun with the urban design. In addition to be a planner, I'm also a landscape architect. So this could be a fun project here to put some seating and educational signage and art along the way. Next, we'll look at Redmond Pond. It was brought up to us from the beginning of this project that it would be really cool to do some type of trail system around Redmond Pond. As we know, this is a migratory bird flyover spot, so there's some really great birding that happens here. And it's currently, there's some desire paths out there, but we looked into potentially creating a trail system on the north end of Redmond Pond, and then putting a viewing boardwalk on this kind of southwest portion of the pond, which would be directly across from a senior living center. So here's a rendering of what a boardwalk or overview could potentially look like. Could be a really great draw to locals and visitors alike. We could place some educational signage here to teach folks about the local ecology, the wildlife, and the South Jetty. Finally, we'll look at South Jetty Park. We think there's a lot of potential here at the park. This is another slider graphic. So when you get here, know that you can click on this and slide it back and forth. So when you slide it all the way to the left, you see the current conditions. It's pretty much a large parking lot with gravel and the bathroom, right? But as you scroll this to the right, you can see a vision that we see for the South Jetty Park. So what we've done here is we've greatly reduced the size of the parking lot. But what we've done is really delineated the parking spaces to ensure there's still ample amount of parking. We know that folks really love to drive down here and park and look out at the ocean. We know it can get quite windy down there. So viewing the ocean from the comfort of your car, we wanted to maintain that, and we did that in this design. But with what we've done with reducing that size of that parking lot is we've been able to naturalize the edges. And that's what you're seeing here. And we could add some dunes and planting. And what's really going to be beneficial here is that you saw in some of those previous photos that during those high storm events, big logs get moved onto the road and into the parking lot. They've actually high-centered cars. There's can be dangerous to folks that are down there. And it causes a lot of issues for the already constrained public works department to then go out and move all those logs off the road, right? So what we're hoping is that some of these naturalized edges can rack up that wood in a more natural way and create some space between some of those ocean forces and the public. With this, we could put in some trails, we could have picnic spots, we could have interpretive signage, things of that nature. And we also recommend moving the bathroom back. We've seen some photos of high tide events when logs are actually getting thrown onto the bathroom, and the bathroom is actually getting inundated with water. So we think in a long-term solution, it would be valuable to move that back from the ocean. And that's it for the concept plan. I'll turn it over to Dylan.
Could I make a comment?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I haven't seen your plan, so this is the first time I've been looking at it. And there's a lot of features in there I like. I just know that the locals really like to park out to look at if they're going to be out in a boat, they really like to take a good hard look at the bar crossing. And you've got a nice vantage point the closer you get, of course, to the jetty and furthest out. And it's pretty routine most mornings to see vehicles out there, trucks and stuff, just checking it out. So they've really got a nice line of sight. Now, that's not to say they can't do it. They just have to park and get out of their truck and walk. And so I just don't know how popular that's going to be to some of the locals. And I also had a question on the racking logs, how those, I imagine those are logs you put there perpendicular, and they serve to what, collect debris, kind of collect and snag driftwood logs and such to kind of create a berm. Is that what that's for?
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of a design idea I played around with and got some feedback on, like, that might work. That might be something fun to play around with. So I did incorporate it here. And yes, it is intended to capture some of those big logs during those storm events to keep them away from some of the newly installed infrastructure.
You could, if that's a real thing, I imagine you can source logs from the beach to do that.
That would give it a nice aesthetic too, I would think. I can picture it now.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeff, I have a question. Do you think if they moved the parking that's currently on the south side of the parking lot and sort of flipped the design to put the parking on the north, so it would be facing the river, would that be helpful to folks who are checking the bar, or you think they really need to be getting like much closer to the actual jetty itself?
Yeah, it would be helpful to people looking at the bar, although I think it's not as efficient, of course, and as far as the design goes. And also I think the area next to the jetty there that they do currently drive up to is I think the Corps actually owns that property. So they would probably have their own ideas about what goes on there. And I think actually, now I think about it, I did talk to the Corps a while ago, somebody at the Corps, about that property ownership, and I think they still want access. I think they'll want some road access or some way they can access that edge. So it's probably worth looking into a little bit more what they need and are looking for, and maybe it can be, yeah.
Like a
It-
turnaround or something.
Right. So there may be something to work with there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's great. I'm realizing now as I'm looking at this that my annotation for the Army Corps access is a little off, so I'm going to change that before I share it with you all. But we did try to think about giving them access and maintaining that access so they can get out there and do what they need to do. But yeah, these concept plans are definitely not set in stone. Here's what you should do. They're ideas for what could be. So some of these nitty-gritty details that we're getting into, that's what these concept plans are meant to do. They're meant to flush out some of these ideas. So when you get to the 50, 75%, 90% design, you've worked through those issues and those are incorporated. So this plan's doing exactly what we want it to do, and it's engage conversation and start a dialogue around what this could be. So appreciate that feedback.
Thanks.
Great. So we get to our long range planning, where a lot of our solutions thus far have been discussing more of the short and intermediate term. But when we're looking at our forecasts, we thought that it was our responsibility to discuss what happens if the projections of continued sea level rise flooding scenarios come to be. And that's when we're going to be talking about introducing managed retreat as a conversation between the city and the community. That could be a myriad of options over quite a few decades, depending on the comfort level and the resources of the community. But these things are obviously difficult conversations to have, as there's a strong emotional connection of people to place, particularly in an area that is so well loved like the South Jetty. But we want to make sure that the community has as much agency and as much time to be introduced to these concepts as possible.
And that, folks, takes us to a conclusion where we just say this plan is meant to, look at a future of what the South Jetty could be. It kind of just wraps up the project with a nice sunrise shot over the South Jetty. Again, really enjoyed visiting this area. This was from a morning run that I went on, and it was just like, man, this place is pretty special. And with that, we have our sources and contact information at the end. So again, we will share this with you once some edits are made that I noticed throughout this run through, and you can check it out on your own time. And with that, I would like to open it up for any further additional questions, comments.